Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle visiting legislators yesterday, pushing for transit reform and more money. It is the Center Square here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Wake up with us here on YouTube each morning and get news clips and such by subscribing to our YouTube page. So make it happen. Obviously, we're in the last month of the Illinois General Assembly legislative session. So we got 4 weeks for them to pass a budget. The governor proposed a almost $55 billion budget. That's the largest state spending plan in state history. There's a little bit of wiggle room in there, several $100 million of a budget surplus that the governor is proposing with his spending. But you have a whole host of other asks. And at the Capitol, some of you may have been there. I did meet Captain Mike at the Capitol yesterday, and it was jam-packed with people, all kinds of different groups there advocating for legislation. Many of them out there, nonprofit groups looking for more funding. There were groups saying that the governor's plan of reducing the line item for non-citizen health care costs should be restored. You had groups in the same camp saying that they also need to restore more funding for welcoming centers across the state. So a lot of non-citizen funding being advocated for. You have others there looking for higher rates to be paid to certain types of healthcare workers, and I'm sure that governing bodies all across the state as well are there with their hat out, including Chicago with Mayor Brandon Johnson there to talk to legislators. Johnson held a news conference. I was able to go, and one of the questions a reporter asked was about specifics on what kinds of revenue streams that Johnson is looking to bring about. And he's talked for months about, quote, progressive revenue, because, of course, the city of Chicago has an estimated $1 billion, if not $1.5 billion budget deficit. They just took out a loan for $800 million that they're floating payments for several years without even making a principal payment on that. You've also got the teachers union contract. That's, $1.5 billion over several years. By the end of the contract, the average Chicago teacher will make $114,000 a year. So a lot of costs that the city of Chicago has, but the state of Illinois also, there's a lot of competing priorities. We're in the last 4 weeks. Will we see what happens? Not sure. But of course, with all the costs that people have and they're coming to the state for your tax dollars, you also have the transit system that is in pretty bad shape. There's a fiscal cliff of more than $700 million that's been reported by 2026 if something's not done. So with that in the in the future here, you have others who are pushing for transit reform. So let's go ahead and hear a little bit of the back and forth with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson saying, hey, we need more funding for public transit, especially in Chicago.
My team, working with the Chicago Transit Authority, has been very clear about the importance of ensuring that, the region that generates 87% of ridership has to receive its fair share in funding.
So he's looking for, quote, fair share of funding for the riders in Chicago. Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle talking about the reforms and some of the efforts to try to combine the various transit agencies like CTA and Metra and all these different agencies that, public transit. And here's Preckwinkle talking about, what kinds of reforms are possible, but also the funding that's necessary.
Northeastern Illinois is the economic engine of the state of Illinois, and a well-functioning public transportation system is essential to our economic growth and vibrancy. So that's been the priority of our team, and we are focused both on governance and more resources. We have dozens of appointing entities. Doesn't make sense to us, and we also believe if we're going to get state support for this, that the governor should have some appointments on our transit board.
So the makeup of whatever kind of consolidation could be, still we haven't seen the actual plan that would get passed. We've seen proposals, and there's been tons of hearings about this, trying to find a way to pay for that fiscal cliff, but at the same time have some reforms. And the governor several weeks ago, I think it was last week actually, talked about how you can do both at the same time. You can do funding with reforms on top in the same legislative session. You don't have to wait. So clearly that's going to be one of the big ticket items that we see just before legislative session ends. at the end of May. But you had Republicans the day before. Johnson and Preckwinkle showed up saying that, listen, transit reform is going to happen, but there needs to be fairness for especially some of the suburbs and for the downstate area. Here is State Senator Don DeWitt, a Republican from St. Charles.
That $1.5 billion revenue stream is going to have to be generated. I think if we can get governance resolved, get the $770 million fiscal cliff resolved this session, and I think it can be done before the end of May, we can deal with the bigger problem down the road of how do we make the system better. But we need to reform the structure first so that the appropriate people have the authority to make the decisions they need to make to improve CTA, Metra, and PACE within the RTA mass transit system.
So DeWitt saying it is possible we're going to see that happen before the end of May. What it looks like, again, as somebody who's covered the State House for over a decade now, these are the big ticket issues that we're not necessarily get the finalized details until just before it goes onto the House floor or just before it goes onto the Senate floor. Just like the budget. So I fully anticipate we'll find out about what this is going to cost taxpayers and what the governance structure is going to look like for transit, but it's probably going to come either late night or early morning, just before they go and pass it. But back to, the idea of your tax dollars, right? Because all this, you're paying for it. You are the taxpayer in the state of Illinois, and you're paying for it. And Brandon Johnson, he says, there needs to be, quote, progressive revenue.
We have a flat income tax. That's a problem. Everybody knows that. It's a problem, right? There are too many corporate loopholes in this state that working people across this state don't get to benefit, because there's a special attention to a particular subgroup of corporations that have drained our system, right? And whether you are a non-for-profit in Peoria, or if you are a farmer, or if you're a community-based organization, or you're a school district, the way the trajectory is occurring, there's not going to be enough in the long run to respond to our retirement obligations and responsibilities, as well as the investments that the people of the state of Illinois, and particularly the city of Chicago, want us to make. And so we have to look at every single option on the table to ensure that we create an economic structure that benefits working people across this state.
Will there be another push to get a question on the ballot about changing the state's flat income tax to a, quote, progressive income tax? Don't know. We haven't really seen that proposal brought up in the State House again after it was killed by voters back in 2020, if you recall. The next month is going to be interesting, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you join us so you stay on top of what's going on with your tax dollars at the state of Illinois Capitol. I'll be there with the Center Square. We got a great team. Go to thecentersquare.com, get the newsletter, and wake up with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily each and every weekday morning right here on YouTube.